What is up, plant people? Today's Tuesday, October 20th, 2020, 10/20/2020. And we're back with another episode of the Planthropology Podcast, the show where we dive into the lives and careers of some really, really cool plant and nature people, see what makes them tick, and what keeps them coming back for more. I'm Vikram Baliga, your humble guide through this journey of discovery about how we as humans connect back to our environment and why people like to do it. How is everyone today? I hope you are super well. I am beside myself with excitement for you to hear this episode. This was such a good one. It's something that lives kind of close to my heart. It's about a really great local program with a friend of mine who I've been wanting to get on the show for quite a while, and I'm really, really excited. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. First, just a couple of quick things. The show's first birthday is coming up soon. Can y'all believe it? Can you believe it's almost been a year? I cannot. It's coming up in just about 2 weeks on November 5th, which is the 1 year anniversary or the first birthday of the Planthropology Podcast. If you want to get me a gift, what you can get me is a rating and a review on Apple or on Podchaser or somewhere else. Really anywhere you can drop some information or leave a review for the show. I would love a 5-star rating, but I also want you to be honest. And if there's something I'm doing that you don't like or something that I'm not doing that you would like to hear, please let me know. Maybe send me an email at planthropologypod@gmail.com instead of leaving me a bad rating or bad review. But you know what? To each his own, and I will let you do you. Follow us on social media. We're all the places, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just search for Planthropology. You'll find the green background, the little white tree. Although we do have a new logo coming out soon, which I'm not going to tell you much about, but we will unveil it on our birthday on November 5th. Again, so excited. Okay. Jumping into today's episode, my guest today is Matt McEwen, who I've known for a few years through a variety of different things. We kind of run in some of the same circles here in Lubbock, but Matt is the director of the Food Bank Farm, Orchard, and GRUB program for the South Plains Food Bank. And we talk more about what that is, but essentially the GRUB program, which is where we spend most of our time on this episode today, is a great summer program for local high school students, local teenagers, where they can come and get a part-time job, learn skills and how to grow stuff and how to run a small business and all kinds of things. And the big goal, as we discuss, is breaking these cycles of poverty. And it is such an amazing program. And that's over and above the amazing work that the South Plains Food Bank Orchard, which has about 2,500 apple trees, and the Food Bank Farm, which grows a lot of food for this community, do. It's over and above all of that great work. So I can't wait for you to hear it. We talk a little bit about fire ecology, and because Matt has also studied prescribed burns and fire ecology, and this guy has done a little bit of everything. And it was such a fun conversation. There's definitely going to be a part 2 sometime soon, probably, where we really talk more about the way that fire formed our world and formed our societies and all of that. So anyway, I don't want to delay anymore. I'm going to jump into it. I hope you really enjoyed today's episode, because I know I really enjoyed recording it. So grab yourself an apple and your favorite fall beverage and settle in for episode 31 of the Planthropology Podcast with Matt McEwen. Well, we're back with another episode of Planthropology, and I'm actually sitting out here at the South Plains Food Bank Farm, and you can hear crickets and you can hear all kinds of stuff, and I kind of love the ambience, so you get to hear it too. But I'm here with my friend Matt McEwen, who is the farm manager. Is that your
director of the Farm, Orchard, and GRUB division?
That's a much better title than I gave you. Director of Farm, Orchard, and GRUB. The GRUB Farm. So, man, thanks for being on with me today.
Yeah, I've so been looking forward to it. We've crossed. Yeah, I'm so been looking forward to it. We've crossed paths over the years, and this is a neat opportunity.
Yeah, and I know that likewise. I think that when I made my initial list when I first started this of people I wanted to talk to, you were definitely on there, and we're I don't remember when this is coming out. I think it'll be like the second or third week in October, and this is like leading up to our 1 year anniversary. So there were a few people that I was like, okay, I want to get them in before we hit 1 year, and you were on that list because you've done so many things.
Yeah, I'm in a totally different space now than I was a year ago when you started. Still covering a lot of the same things, but yeah, definitely in a new role. And it's been a different year.
Yes, that and I think about, and we'll talk about kind of your background and how you got here, but I think about changing careers and vastly changing careers in 2020, and what a stressful but maybe exciting thing that could have been. So why don't you just kind of kick it off and introduce yourself a little bit more? Tell us about your background and how you got to where you are.
Yeah. I mean, born and raised here in Lubbock. This is my home. Spent a couple years down in the hill country, not going to school after high school. But it was fun, and it was at that time, when you're 18 in your hometown, you didn't really appreciate it. So it took me leaving for a couple years, and then once I came back, I saw it as a totally different community. Got involved with like the arts. They were kind of blossoming. I look back, 20 years ago in high school, there was no art trail. There was so many things that were different that kids growing up now have at their, you go to the First Friday Art Trail, and there's like hundreds of high school kids. So it's really neat to see how our community has evolved. And I mean, good God, before I was 26 years old, I probably had a paycheck from 26 different entities. I was always working. My family had a moving business that kept me busy during the summers and gave me the work ethic to go to school. I didn't want to be a mover for my whole life. And kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do as far as like my degree. Always kind of wanted to teach, but then I could never like buckle down and do the actual 4-year teaching thing. And I wanted to major in nature. Actually, I wanted to minor in nature, and I figured out it didn't fit with the block scheduling of becoming a teacher. So
right.
I said, I'm going to major in it. And Dr. Tomlinson in the Honors College talked to me. She said, I think this program would be great. And it was natural history and humanities. Incredible degree that's now, I think, turned back into a minor only. Mm-hmm. Very small. All classes were pretty much outside. Our capstone course was 10 days on the Green River in Utah.
Wow.
Leadership and landscape. We had, a spring break trip on the Rio Grande. We had weekend trips to the Brazos River. I mean, it was like every time I turn around, we're on a canoe. And that was just an incredible experience. And an educational setting. I mean, this was like our class. And so that was cool. But going through that, it's like I got married in 2008, graduated in 2009. I had told my mom it might take me 10 years to get my degree. So I actually did it a year early.
Oh, that's good.
But didn't know what I wanted to do. My in-laws were like, what are you going to do with that degree? People hear history and they don't hear the natural side of things. But I always wanted to do something, with the land and be outside. So luck would have it, I started as a student assistant at the Lubbock Lake Landmark, building their boardwalk trail.
Oh, okay.
And that was a different kind of deal. And then, I ended up becoming their technician and spent 7 years there. And I learned, I like to say, I'm a city kid, but I kind of grew up on the outskirts of North Lubbock. So I did, play around in cotton fields.
Right.
But didn't grow up in the ag background. And so everything I learned at the Landmark was just all brand new, like driving tractors, driving skid steers, clearing brush, spraying brush, harvesting wildflowers. And then the burning, that was something that my last semester of school, my boss at the Landmark said if you could take 2 classes, take GIS and fire ecology or prescribed burning.
Right.
So I did that. And then I also went to a prescribed burn school taught by a private contractor. And that was a week long. And I actually learned more in a week with him, who had 30 years of experience in an entire semester at Tech.
Yeah.
So, 7 years at the Landmark, just kind of learning stewardship. And then started working on my master's while I was there. I discovered in the archives of the museum in the basement 20 permanent transect photo points. And they were done in 95. And it was supposed to be a permanent, like somebody was supposed to do these transects.
Yeah.
Every year, maybe 2 years, every 5 years. Well, when I found them in like 2007, nobody even remembered that had even happened. So I kind of did some background research. Come to find out, it was a professor that was at Tech, and she was now at like the University of Idaho. She had all the raw data still in a filing cabinet. Sent it to me, and then I decided I wanted to redo that. There had been a lot of management done at the Landmark, from clearing mesquite to restoring the prairie species that belong there, and some prescribed burning and some chemical applications. So I was like, this would be a good opportunity to look at how has this plant community changed over time, and then factor in there'd been a couple of droughts during that time.
Yeah.
So go figure that the first year I did my research was 2010.
Okay.
And I think the city got 3.8 inches.
Yeah.
And we were at the Landmark when one of those inches fell on the airport. So we know that we got an inch less than that. So,
right.
I mean, it was like nothing grew. We had burned 80 acres, which the Landmark is 336 acres. So 80 acres was a huge chunk of land to burn.
Yeah.
We burned it in December 2009, and then it didn't rain. And so I was out there doing my transects, looking at a burnt clump of grass that might have one blade of grass that came up, and then it was already turning brown.
Right.
So I got really good, actually, at IDing things that looked very pitiful. I could tell 3-on and blue grama. I was like, that's either 3-on or blue grama. But that whole year ended up being shot,
Yeah.
But it was still fun. And then 2011 was a little bit better. I mean, we got like 6 inches of rain.
Yeah. It's funny that's better, right?
Yeah. It was like twice as good. It was still absolutely,
6 inches of rain.
It was still absolutely terrible. We averaged 18.
Yeah.
But we never get that.
No.
So that was fun. Just kind of learning. So to go back, the guy that taught me the prescribed burn school, I adopted him as my mentor.
Okay.
With land stewardship, and the same with my boss at the Landmark, Scott. And I'd gone and helped Keith do some transects down in the hill country where he had been doing research trying to restore some of the hill country communities. And I was just so fascinated that he knew all these species by like a 4-letter code.
Yeah.
And I was like, which is, the scientific names, the first 2 letters of the first and second species and genus. And I was like, this is so cool. I want to be that guy. Like, I want to know who all these plants are.
Yeah.
And so my first semester of grad school, I took plant ID, and it was actually, I don't know if you knew Dr. Wester.
Oh, yeah.
He's down in Kingsville now. That was his last semester to teach that class.
Okay.
And I remember the first day he came in there, he was like, I may have passed you coming to class, but I don't know your name, so I probably didn't see you. And he related that to plants. And I was like, oh my God, it's like, those are my friends, and I can't wait to learn their names.
Yeah.
And so even now, I'm just like, I still think about plants in like 4-letter codes.
Yeah.
And I haven't done my transects in 5 years.
Yeah.
So I did collect data again in 2015, but I haven't, this. I have my data, and it has not been published.
Oh,
I
man.
haven't touched it, and my PI has got like 7 different projects, and he says he'll touch it, but
Yeah, I know. I understand.
it's just sitting there, and I hate that. That's not our goal. It's like being scientists is to just but I was more always kind of fascinated by just the boots on the ground collection.
Yeah, sure.
Sitting at the desk and analyzing. I was like,
man, I understand that. I think you and I are both very much nature lovers and plant lovers, and I'm an applied scientist, right? Like I struggle with science that doesn't have a direct impact, right?
Like tangible.
Yeah, if I can't work with a grower or producer, and if I can't like deliver something that people can use, I struggle. I mean, and I understand the need for basic science. That's important, but that's not me. I'm very much like you say, a boots on the ground, applied scientist kind of guy. So I totally get that for sure.
I think I'd still be happy if I was just a technician with somebody telling me go collect this data out here. But they say as you evolve in your career, you're going to be outside less and less.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
And so far it's been all right. Finished that master's, and as I was doing that, a position opened up inside the loop at Quailtech.
Okay.
And that position hadn't existed. Dr. Dabbert, who had built the program up, saw it kind of needed a shift to where they would actually have like a permanent manager, somebody that could be a regular contact for their 24 landowners.
Yeah.
And instead of just transient grad students. So I kind of built that up from a position that didn't exist, and ended up, before I left, I was there a little over 3 years, and it was just building up to getting full-time biologists, seasonal research techs, to just take our data that we'd built up for 10 years and actually start doing stuff with it.
Yeah.
And very fortunate to hire who's now running the program. He started out as a volunteer, and then we hired him as a student assistant, and then we hired him as a technician. So he's been running with that program ever since I left and taking it to a whole different level. And then there was a little spell of 6 months doing something that I thought was going to be better than it was. And then I was in a workshop, transformative leadership workshop at the Volunteer Center. And that's when I met my current boss here. And this position, FOG director at the food bank, was open. And I just read it, and I was like, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
This is where I was at before was not my calling. And I've always been fortunate to be happy in most of my jobs, at least in the last 10 to 15 years. So being miserable was not going to work for me. So I've been so blessed to join this community.
Yeah.
We're going to take this division to a new level. And it's people like you, working with you, AgriLife, Master Gardeners.
Yeah.
There's so many volunteers that once they hear about what we do, they just want to come out and contribute and do what they can to help us. And it's been amazing.
Well, so that's a good segue, and so I mentioned that there's two, before we started recording, there's two things I really want to cover today, and that's the food bank GRUB program and the food bank farm, and then I do want to talk about fire ecology. But I think that was a good segue into just starting with what you do here now. So can you give us just a quick overview of the food bank farm and the orchard and the GRUB program?
Yeah. So they're actually, there's a farm manager, orchard manager, and then a GRUB manager, and then we have assistants for each. But my philosophy since I've started is that we're not three separate parts of this division. We all function together. The orchard is a neat thing going on. Sits on about 15 to 17 acres, 2,500 trees, and it's challenging.
That's all apples, correct?
It's 98% apples. We do have a few fig trees, and there's a few young pomegranates.
Oh, okay.
But it was started as an apple orchard. Rotary kind of sponsored it, and they're the wind beneath the wings for that program. But every single, when I tell our technicians and our managers that we're not just like weed eating and taking care of 2,500 trees. Every one of those trees is in somebody's name. It's either in memory or honor. And furthermore, it's like Dr. George Ellie, who started it, he planted those trees by hand and hand watered them. And so, I mean, there's a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears and heart and soul in that property. And it's almost sacred. And so this year has not been a banner year by any means. There's, you deal with fruit trees. There's like 2 dozen things that want to kill apple trees.
Yes.
So that's a challenge. And then the farm here and GRUB are about 20 years old. I think the farm was doing stuff a little bit earlier than that, but once the GRUB program started, then it's kind of been solid ever since.
Okay.
Before that, it was probably like, not as productive. And so, this marks the 20th year of GRUB. And what GRUB was started out as growing recruits for urban business. It was geared towards at-risk youth. And I believe like the first few years, like Jennifer and Farmer Roy, who was like the heart and soul, his spirit still lives here.
Yeah.
They were literally going and picking up these kids that needed work, and bringing them out here. And so we kind of just used the farm as a backdrop for giving youth life skills, social skills, job skills.
Yeah.
And it's been going strong for 20 years. And so all that said, we have a community-supported agricultural program which funds the GRUB youth.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to a lady this morning, and she was already she didn't catch it this year, but she already wanted to join next year. And so I tell her, I was like, she's like, what are the benefits? And I said, the benefit is that you provide a teenager with a part-time summer job.
Yeah.
And that kind of threw her off. And I was like, well, I mean, really, that's your benefit. I think the produce is just a bonus.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we do. So we have a pretty good sized CSA shareholder group, and starting in June, every week we're able to provide produce to these shareholders, and especially during the summer, they get to see the kids working. I mean, the kids start from planting to maintaining the row crops to harvesting, and then they get to interact with the shareholders, and the shareholders get to see that their investment is, it's tangible.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, COVID happened, but we were hoping it to be a bigger celebration for GRUB's 20th. But
sure.
It got a little overshadowed by the fact, and rightfully so, there were a lot more hungry people this year. So the food bank had to kind of shift gears. And we're fine. GRUB's good.
Yeah. Well, okay. So to take just a brief step back, and I there's so many questions I have that I want to dive into because it's such a cool thing. So between the farm and the orchard and everything else, and you have a CSA program, how does that fit in with the mission of the South Plains Food Bank?
So that's a good question. It's ending hunger and enriching lives. Okay. And I think we definitely our spotlight is on the enriching lives. This was my first summer of GRUB, and Sandy, our GRUB manager, this was her 6th summer. And I mean, we're talking about every other youth farm in the country that had a program during the summer, as far as I know, canceled.
Right.
And so it was a hard decision, and it still kept me up like every night pretty much during the summer. It was like, did I do the right thing? But we did. We kept, we hired, by the end of the summer, we had kept 17 youth.
Okay.
And no COVID scares, but I felt like they were better here than to not have a GRUB program. And we saw that the kids, different backgrounds, they all just went through this together, and that camaraderie. And then just the kids, there's just something magical about this place. And I think there's something magical about working with the earth, mm-hmm. that you literally see these kids blossom, not just socially, but as in a mature way. I was telling you earlier, there's a couple that just blossomed into like wanting to literally take ownership of this place, and not selfishly, but for like thinking about the next generation of GRUB. And that was a mission moment, as our new CEO Dina says. And So yeah, that was awesome.
That's amazing. And, we've talked a couple times with different guests on the podcast that access to nature is something we don't think about, but it's something that a lot of these urban youth don't have, right? Even in an agricultural community like Lubbock, we're not a small. People think we're a tiny little blip on. I mean, there's 300,000 people in the city, probably by now. We serve as the hub for 1 million people. Yeah. And some of these kids that grow up in town, like, we're sitting. How big is this farm?
It's like maybe 5 acres.
Okay.
And so 3.5 are probably in cultivation, but yeah, it's not that big.
No,
I mean, it's like a couple of vacant lots.
Yeah, but like a lot of these kids, this may have been their first experience with something like this. And I may do a video before I leave. I may, if it's okay with you, may do a quick video of just, showing the property, just so people that listening to this can hear it. But like, we're sitting at this bench outside, painted like a watermelon, under a pear tree. There's raised beds I can see with chard and a few other things, and squash behind me, some high tunnels. And it's just such a cool opportunity for these kids to experience something different. Again, I think y'all providing this access to nature and this access to real skills and real life tools and real life experiences, I don't know how you place a value on that. I really don't.
No, I mean, it is priceless. And I wish I would have known about it when I was in high school. Yeah, and you do see that, like, these kids, they didn't even know they had it in them. Yeah. To be able to like learn how to do things with tools or construction, and just moving a wheelbarrow full of cucumbers up the hill. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's like I said, the value is being put into these growing the next generation.
Yeah.
The backdrop, and this is just a vessel. Yeah. And I think that speaks to even any natural setting that you can incorporate, like education and skill building. So yeah, it's I love it.
Well, and I can tell you do. And again, we've known each other kind of on and off for a few years, and I think this is the most like I've heard you be passionate. I mean, because like you're passionate about fire ecology and all that, but it seems like this is just where you were meant to be.
I think so, and when I hear it from my boss who had this job, that's the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
So, and I was happy at Quailtech, and I was happy at the Landmark, but I just kept feeling like I was outgrowing those positions. And this one, I told David Weaver, I was like, I'm cool if I'm like fog director for the next 30 years. Is that cool?
Can I do that?
Yeah. Can this just be my last job?
And what a cool feeling that is. And I hope for those of you listening that we talk a lot about careers on this podcast and just how it's never a straight line, right? We twists and turns, we do all kinds of stuff. But what a cool feeling. And I feel like I've found that in my current role is that if this is the last job I ever have, I'm happy that this was the last job I've ever had.
And this was like the first job that really clicked with me, because it's not anything I've actually done before, but I felt like all those stepping stones, they led me to this, you know, and I feel like I'm definitely qualified and geared and passionate about taking this and putting my spin on it.
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as coming to the office every day, I can think of worse places.
Yeah. I have an office at the food bank, and I'm not there. I have to balance it, but yeah, if I could help it, I'd probably spend 30 to 40 hours just here.
Right. So, okay, a couple of questions. I have some specific questions just about the GRUB program and how it works. 'Cause I think this is something that is probably fairly unique. I don't know are there a lot of other programs around the country like this?
As far as I know, definitely one of the most unique things is being under the umbrella of the food bank.
Okay.
There's Urban Roots down in Austin.
Okay.
And that's a youth farm. There's a Soul Fire Farm, I think up in New York, and then, or maybe that's the one in New Orleans. Or no, Houdat Farm is the one in New Orleans.
Okay.
So there's and then there's another one actually called GRUB which is, I think, was the inspiration for this program. So yeah, it's one of those things, like, I think it'd be neat to set up a network of youth farms.
Sure.
Like, especially during COVID, I reached out to a couple and they were like, no, we're canceling. And I was like, oh, but yeah, I think it's a growing phenomenon. But every one of them is different. They all have their different spin, their different missions.
Yeah.
Some are more social activists. Our main thing is to just kind of break the cycle of poverty.
Yeah.
To change the next generation's outlook and opportunities.
Yeah. That's great. Well, and I think looking at our society today and the craziness of, like, just what our world is doing today, how much better would we be if every high school student had a chance to spend a summer on a farm learning about, like, where their food comes from and the intricacies of going from a seed to a tomato on a plate. Like, I think it would help with our health overall. Yeah. It would help with maybe just compassion towards the people around us. I think there's a lot that we can learn through community agriculture that is unfortunately an experience a lot of people don't get.
It is. But I didn't have it either.
Yeah.
I just felt like it was something that happened to me later in life, and I fell in love with it. So yeah. I know that if you expose kids to it, then you will have that impact on it.
So some details about the GRUB program, because it is so fascinating, and it is something I bet that is new information to a lot of people. So you take about 20 kids a summer, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we have generally we have enough funds to hire 20.
Okay.
And I think we hired 19 this summer, and by the end of it, 17 were still there.
Sure.
Which is pretty good.
So what does that selection process look like? So how do kids go about finding the program and applying and all of that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, historically we would just recruit, like, community service kids. They made a mistake. They end up having to do their volunteer hours and get community service, and from that we try to recruit them. And this is going to be the second weekend of our academic year program, mm-hmm. which is every Saturday, 9 to 12. It's open to any volunteers, roughly from like 10 to 18. And we get a lot of those kids that were hired last summer to come back, and then we try to tell them to bring friends. And as far as recruitment, this year has kind of been hard. But just, some of it's just looking at some of the youth in my neighborhood or Sandy's neighborhood and finding a kid that you're like, you need GRUB.
Yeah. And
so we've been, some of it's just organic. I don't think we've ever done like a full on like blast to like recruit people. But yeah, during the summer they can come every Saturday and we kind of accumulate or we keep track of their hours, but we look at different variables. It's not just who came the most Saturdays.
Yeah.
Some of it is just literally thinking about the decision of, if we hire this kid, is it going to benefit his family more by having a part-time job? Or this kid, he needs an opportunity to prove himself and take responsibility of a job. I mean, there's a lot of kids that this is their first paycheck.
Yeah.
And we even have some that, we hire them 14 to 18-year-olds. And this summer we had a 13-year-old, and she was awesome. And so she volunteered for 2 weeks, and then when she turned 14, we hired her. And she ended up being one of the youngest, but then she grew the most, and she held her own ground. I mean, it was amazing. So you see these changes in kids. So it's Sandy's got a lot of metrics that, it's not just quantitative stuff.
Yeah.
But, looking at people's character and then looking at the dynamics of the entire group as a whole too.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and that's really cool. And you said something earlier that I think is such an integral part of this.
Throw an apple, throw a pear at him.
Oh, I'm definitely leaving that in. And I want to make the point right now that we're sitting outside, and this is a working working farm. And so there's stuff going on, and I love it.
Yeah,
It makes me
Cody's
so
in the
happy.
shop making noise and
dropping nails and stuff.
Shareholders are coming to pick up their shares.
No, I love it. But you made a point earlier about breaking cycles of poverty. And that's, I think, something that people don't think enough about. There's unfortunately this attitude in certain circles of just go get a job. Just go do something and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. When the fact of the matter is, we get stuck in these cycles, and if you don't have someone or an opportunity to learn, okay, just go get a job. What does that even mean? For a lot of people, that doesn't mean anything.
Who's going to drive you to that job?
Yeah,
I mean, some of these kids, they don't have cars when they're 16.
No.
Yeah.
I'd wager a lot of them don't. Yeah. And so people working, I'm gonna say this: working is a learned skill. People that have never had the opportunity to have a job, to be taught the skills that goes into it, it's real easy for, I think, folks to maybe be like, oh, they're just lazy. They have never had the opportunity. And learning about something like this is such an opportunity. Yeah. And so I love the heart behind this, that it's not just give these kids a job for the summer, but you said, whose family can we benefit the most through this? Where can we plug in and kind of drive a spike in these cycles of poverty and break them down?
Yeah. And, we have classes during the summer, and we had Kenneth Castillo with the Voice of Hope.
Voice of Hope, I think that's right. Yeah.
And his talk it stuck with me. And this is what he does, but it was perfect for him to come talk to our GRUB kids. Like, sometimes a program like this is the first time they can experience a healthy relationship, a healthy environment, and that's huge. Like, for somebody that, if that's news to them, a lot of these youth, I mean, everything is stacked against them.
Yeah.
And so if we can just get one kid to just break the cycle, or, save one life, then it's worth it. Yeah. And again, how do you put a price on that?
You can't. You can't. And you said save one life, and that's real. That is a real thing. This episode's going to be pretty heavy, but I like it, but in a good way, because I think that we don't think about that sometimes things like this are literally saving lives. I mean, they did a review of the program a few years ago to see if it was working. Yeah. And one kid said it saved his life. That's amazing.
I mean, that's it. But it's not even just like the at-risk youth. There was a young kid. He was adopted from China, and whatever the circumstances were, for he lost his parents, but he was almost like he was ostracized. Yeah. And so he got adopted here, and his mom found out about this program, and she was worried, because he was bullied back in China. Come to find out, she was worried, maybe he'll get bullied, picked on, whatever. He would come home talking about it every single day, and he was included. Yeah. And I mean, we have a diverse group of kids, and they didn't treat him like anything different. And he ended up getting officially adopted this summer. Wow. He started to learn how to cook dumplings, which was like his homeland thing. And he was so proud to share that with the GRUB kids. Yeah. And I mean, he even would bring me the dumplings, and he'd just look at me waiting to see what my reaction was.
That's incredible.
I mean, he was, so like I said, there's just something magical about when you pull all these things together that just really, and I think I can speak for myself and the staff, is it's such a rewarding place and job.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and we'll put more information in the show notes and stuff, so y'all can go look at the GRUB program and look at what they do. And if you're able to donate and help support this amazing thing, I think that's something you should, if you're able, and if that's something that you're interested in, we'll definitely give some information. I almost hate to change gears because this is.
No, we could just do a separate one on fire.
And we might. I do want to mention it just real quick before we wrap up. And I don't even know what our time is, and I kind of don't even care. So no, we may end with a little bit more discussion on this, and kind of I want to hear some of your goals and where you move forward. But real quick, because it's relevant right now,
True.
I want to talk about fire ecology. Actually, one of the guests I just interviewed yesterday, a 2-part series that will have already come out when this runs. A guy named Joe Vaughn in Georgia who's works in the timber industry, but has spent spent part of his career as a wildland firefighter. So he did forest fires and all those kinds of things. So we talked about it a little bit, but I just want to spend a few minutes talking about fire ecology, and I want to talk about this in more depth later. But with everything going on, like, give me just the elevator pitch on what fire ecology is, and maybe we'll talk prescribed burns a little bit, and how maybe that can help in the future with some of the things that are going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, you say like it's relevant now. I mean, it's every year.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's Stephen Pine, fire historian. The Earth has been on fire since there was enough fuel and lightning to make it burn.
Yeah.
We are a fire planet, and we are a fire people. That, to me, is like the bottom foundation of like, and not everybody can understand that because whatever, Smokey the Bear, it's the most successful, propaganda campaign ever. Yeah. So my prescribed burn mentor, he's got a graphic, and it's Burney bear, and he's got a drip torch, and all the animals, the bobwhites, the squirrels, the deer, they're all clapping.
Yeah, because
he's burning the forest, which is what it has been doing forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's like I feel like it's like a fight, like a fight to change people's minds that no, really, like, fire belongs here. All these species evolved with fire. Did they burn to the extremes that they're burning now? Probably not. Right. I mean, we can throw in climate change and wildland, people moving into wildlands, and those factors. But I mean, it's just so frustrating that we still have like this mentality that like a grass fire on the side of the highway, we got to put it out before it's, it burns the rangeland.
Yeah.
And there's just so many things that we've done to change the systems, whether it's from grazing or introducing, different species. I know in the West, they're fighting cheatgrass and all these annual grasses that they end up changing the fire regime. But no, I mean, it's just like, I turn on the news and I'm like, oh, really? We're still talking about,
we're still doing this.
We're still spending millions of dollars. We can't put enough water on this fire. We don't have enough resources. Well, if we took, a tenth of those resources and did responsible prescribed burns to reduce that hazard. Mm-hmm. And we say that they say it every year. This is what we need. We've been suppressing fire for too long. And so it's just really like frustrating.
Yeah.
And then only time we talk about it is when it's destroying communities and killing lives, which is terrible. And I don't mean to like, not saying we shouldn't fight these wildfires that are destructive, but you have to know that we're not going to fight fire by putting it all out.
Right.
It's not going to go away.
Right. So, and we can leave it there. Again, I do want to do a second episode sometime.
Because I hadn't even got into Texas fire culture.
No. And I just wanted to get your thoughts because, again, and like you say, it's not just right now. It's every year. Something happens every year. And I get into conversations sometimes about this too. And I'm not super well versed in it, but I've studied it a little just from a literature standpoint. And it's like, oh no, this whole region would be on fire this summer. and I understand that we have to have a place for our houses and our cities and all of that, and fire and wood structure buildings don't necessarily mix real well, but at some point, like, we have come in to an ecosystem that was already running, and we try to bend it. And I think I say this a lot, that we that we try to bend our ecosystems to our will instead of working with them.
Right.
And that's something that, that's knowledge that our ancestors had, of how to live with fire, how to live with the seasonal storms, and how to live with nature, that we have forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, and that is one bright side, though, is that the indigenous cultures on this continent are remembering that, oh yeah, this is how we lived with this system.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it was for benefits of hunting, you could burn a patch of prairie and know that the bison would be back there shortly. Or certain plants would, for medicinal purposes, would show up after a burn.
Yeah.
I mean, they knew that.
Yeah. And
we've lost that. And I think, however many years of suppressing fire, it's going to take that many, if not more, to ever get back to living in harmony with fire.
Like so many things, it's an educational process, and it's it keeps us in a job, right? As nature educators.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's so many things that people only know, like the sound bites about, and not know like the deep history or the deep connection that we had with these aspects of the natural world.
Well, and I think in season 2 or year 2 of this podcast, that's something so it's, the name's Planthropology, where it's supposed to be about the anthropology of nature, and like how we have connected to nature throughout time and have maybe forgotten some of those things. And we've been talking about in year 1, season 1, whatever you want to call it, about like what we do with nature today. But I think I'm going to spend some time in the next year really diving into some of the roots of this ancient knowledge that, it works because they had to live with the land, and that's fire was part of the technology they had. And we're going to dive into that quite a bit more. So
yeah, that's good.
I would definitely love to have you back, in the next year to sometime, maybe sooner than later, to talk more about in more detail about some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
For sure. So that was just an aside, but I think that it was an important aside because of this current news cycle and all the madness that goes along with that. Yeah. So talking back about the grub farm a little bit before we wrap up, what is your vision? You say you want to be here for the rest of your career, or you would be okay with that. Where does this place go next? Where does this head?
I mean, that's it. There's the little things, like I'm looking at this patio. I'm like, we need a wash station right there.
Sure.
I'm looking at this old chemical shed that we're going to convert into a grub shop. I want to give as much opportunity to the kids to develop these skills. So I want to retrofit this shop and it be their shop.
Yeah.
Something that they organize, they do their projects in, they can decorate if they want to paint a mural on the wall. Like, I want them to start having ownership when they come out here. And then be able to something that they pass on. I also just really, want to increase, how many kids that we graduate that go on and do break that cycle.
Yeah.
And it may not be just going to college. There's that East Lubbock resident-owned business initiative. Mm-hmm. That's something I would like to start funneling some of our grub kids in, which can get them really good licensed, careers, whether it's plumbing, being an electrician, welder. There's really good jobs out there that may not fit somebody going to a 4-year school.
Sure.
And I think that's definitely something I would like to work at. And then I was thinking, another vision is, for example, how many of our youth are being raised by a single mom?
Yeah.
Is there something we can do to incorporate, excuse me, is there something we can do to incorporate single mothers into this program and reach out and almost like cultivate them as a family unit.
Yeah.
And what can we do to help that? So that's kind of the stuff I'm looking at. And then just, long-term vision would also be fewer annual weeds that we have to deal with every single year. I'd like us to be organic eventually, just growing, more food and being able to provide more food for our community. Just, plant more fruit trees. Just, I really do. I have like a short-term vision. And then I have this like, the grandiose, like, like having a covered shelter for all of our equipment, like some of those little things like, can we get this under a shed,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the main thing is just getting more of like youth that actually fulfill our mission,
right?
Enriched lives. And just, providing the opportunity for them to look back on this 20 years from now and maybe recommend their kids coming here. Sure. I don't want it to just be like a one summer and then we never see them again. Like, well, we want to foster a lifelong relationship with these youth. And then also just getting other resources in the community that don't know about us that can also help contribute to our mission. Yeah. So I think just a lot of collaborative, which, this year's not the best year to collaborate with a bunch of different people.
Right. Right.
But it's okay. It's definitely something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Well, no, man, that's great. All of that is really great. And I think that all of those are, worthy goals that I think, gosh, people should be willing to plug into. I think people once people, I don't, it's okay. This is a lot of false start that I'm going to have to cut out here in a little bit, but I don't see, and maybe this is naive, maybe this is me being, rosy about this stuff, but once people learn about not just the what you do, but the why you do it, gosh, I don't see how you don't get behind this. I think this is such a great mission and such a good thing that I would love to see more people really in our community, really pour into this, whether that's time or resources or just being willing to like share something on Facebook about it or a tweet about it that gets the message out. I think that's such a cool thing. And I'm glad we get to do our small part as Texas Tech and as this podcast to kind of get the message out a little bit. So something I ask every guest, and I never prep them for it because it's more fun for me that way. Before I let you get away, and some people that have listened are like, okay, I've been thinking about this, but if you had like one piece of advice, life advice, gardening advice, whatever you want that you want to send listeners away with after listening to this chat for an hour, what would that be? Like I said, it's more fun for me when I blindside people with this.
Yeah, no, the first thing that comes to my mind is it's appropriate in some levels, but it was something that my old comrade at Quail Tech, he would actually write this on every notebook, and it's just stuck with me, and I think it's relevant if you think about the GRUB youth, but it's don't let the
bananas
get you down. Because they're everywhere, and sometimes you're a
banana
to yourself, so don't. If that works for you.
Oh, I'm down with it. I always try to come into these last little segments with no pretext, and I just put in whatever people say.
Maybe
bananas.
There's squash bugs, know? And or aphids, or some tree rotting thing that kills, doesn't make those pears tasty.
Right.
We can't let that stuff, stop us from the brighter aspects of whatever we're doing.
Yeah. So I love it. Man, I love it. I'm 100% down for that. There's a chance I'll bleep over that with a plant name that sounds similar.
Don't let the aphids get you down.
Yeah, there we go. I like it. So that's awesome. I could probably talk to you for several hours about this stuff, but I think people are probably pulling up to their jobs right now and are like, hey, I'm going to turn this off. But, where can we find you? If people want to get find the food bank online, if they want to plug in all that, where can we find
Yeah,
it?
so the Farm Orchard and Grub has a page within the food bank's main homepage.
Okay.
And my information's on there. We'll also have signups coming up for the next year's CSA.
Okay.
And then the Grub youth. If there's anybody out there that can think of some youth that might benefit from it, the information's on there. We also have volunteer opportunities, seasonally at the orchard and the Grub farm. And it's all there. There's a lot of pictures from this summer on our website too, so you kind of get to see which the actual faces to these youth that we've hopefully changed their life for the better.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And I'll post links to all the social medias and all the different outlets y'all have in the notes.
And anything that's food bank, they've been really good about promoting parts of our division. So
awesome. Well, man, Matt, thanks so much for talking to me. I really enjoyed that.
No, it's a pleasure. We should definitely do it again.
We will absolutely do it again, because we just barely lit a match. You like that?
Yeah.
That dad joke about fire ecology. So we'll definitely talk about that more next time around. But thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for hanging out with us this past year and listening to us talk about a little bit of everything. But we'll be back next week with, I think, our last episode of year 1. So y'all are the best for hanging in there with us, and we'll see you next time. So long story short, don't let those bananas get you down. Y'all, I hope you enjoyed that. That was such an uplifting and hopeful episode for me. I really enjoyed talking with Matt, and I can't wait to talk to him more about fire and fire ecology. Thanks so much for listening this past year. We are just a couple of weeks from our 1-year anniversary. Next week, I have 2 great episodes coming at you with an archaeobotanist and 2 of his students. And I can't actually figure out a better way to put a pin in the first year of planthropology than to talk about the literal archaeology and anthropology of our human connection to plants. Thanks, as always, to the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science for the constant support. Thanks to all our patrons for supporting the show. If you'd like to become a patron and support the show, hit up patreon.com/planthropology. Thank you. I can't say it enough. Thank you for the last year. I hope you enjoy the content coming at you next week, and I hope you are ready for a great year 2 of planthropology, which will start in just a couple of weeks. But y'all keep being cool plant people, and we will see you in 7 days.